So, Highland Noise Podcast. I'm Shane,
I'm Glory.
and we're here with
Brandon from Fox Lake.
and some questions to say about the upcoming album, New World Heat. So, congrats on that, by the way. How do you feel about the response to the announcement so far?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. The response has been awesome. I think we have been excited about dropping this for so long, and it's been, I mean, some of these songs we wrote like versions of them. At least one of the demos was like 2019, I
Damn.
think, something like
God
that.
damn.
So some of this stuff has been in some form or another. Not to say it's been a finished product, but we've been sitting on it for a long time. So I, to have this stuff finally announced, and after all of the work that goes into it, you spend so much time behind the scenes building something that to finally get it out and let people do what they want with it is really, really cathartic and exciting. So I can't wait for August. Yeah, it's just been such an exciting like climb.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
Well, the album absolutely rips.
Dude, this shit is
Thank you.
incredible. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were raving about it before you joined, but I'm curious about the timeline for the record. Since you mentioned it's been such a long process, when the writing process kind of started, when you had the masters in hand, rough dates. They don't have to be exact.
Let's see. We finished recording everything in like the last week of January. So we had last year we spent basically the entire year doing demos. I think I had written something like 32, 33 songs throughout last year. And then in December, we brought that up to our producer, our good friend Connor Haynes, who drums in the band Mugshot,
Mhm.
who also just dropped a phenomenal record.
Mhm.
And we sat down with all of those and we kind of pruned everything. Um, and then we went back in January for like 2 or 3 weeks to do all the like actual tracking and stuff like that. And then Masters in Hand was probably beginning of March, something like that. Yeah. And then I'm trying to remember when we put out, I think Pure Adrenaline was May. So I think it all happens. It's frustrating because it feels like it happens quick, but it also feels like it takes an eternity.
Mhm.
Because it's like, okay, as soon as you get this, to put something on Spotify takes like 6 weeks,
Mhm.
like just flat out, like 3 to 6 weeks right there. And then as soon as you have a music video, it takes however long to edit. And as soon as you have radio edits and stuff like that, you need new masters. So you'll finish something and then be like, okay, cool. So at the soonest, this will be out in 2, 3 months or something like that.
Yeah, after
Yeah.
all the timelines and whatnot. But
Goddamn.
it sounds like it was just like a labor of love in terms of the writing process with how long it took, but the actual recording and masters in hand was quick for music industry standards.
Yeah, relatively so.
Yeah.
I think, we have some awesome buddies, and we're very, very lucky to have longtime friends who have actually just come up with us. The guy who does all of our mastering, my first like terrible Rise Core band, like
Mhm.
15 years ago, went to him for recording, and he just continued to get better and better and better. And so he has worked on teams in like LA with like Lady Gaga and like it's crazy.
Mhm.
And so again, we're just very, very lucky that that's just a point of connection that we have casually as opposed to having to shop around and find people and
Absolutely.
try to make those connections otherwise.
Yeah, that's huge.
Makes sense. So, is there any meaning behind the album title or cover art?
Yes, very much so for both. The title, we went through a whole process, like a long process of a lot of conversations at the beginning of last year. Because let's see, so 2023, we signed the deal with Monarch in like, or rather, we started the conversation with Monarch in like December of 2023 while we were in Europe on Never Say Die, which was very funny because we're on like a 13-hour time difference. So sometimes we were taking phone calls at like 8 a.m. and sometimes they were taking phone calls at like 11 p.m. just to try to make it work.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we started the process at the beginning of 2024, knowing that we were going into an LP, and we were like, okay, what do we want this to feel like? How do we want it to be presented? I think we've seen a lot of bands, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm talking down on it, because a lot of bands, this is what they're trying to do, and so they're accomplishing it perfectly.
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of bands just kind of like, the whole ethos is like, you drop music, you write it, you drop it, and the whole thing is that it's supposed to feel kind of consolidated. But for us, we wanted this record to be a lot more intentional as far as presentation, and we were like, this is, in our minds, this is our technically our debut record. We had Silence and Violence back in 2020, and that was like 8 songs with 2 interludes, so it's kind of somewhere in between an EP and an LP.
Mhm.
And this one, we were like, okay, we want to do 12 to 13 songs. We want it to be solid all the way through. How do we trim the fat, all killer no filler? How do we make sure that every single moment on this record is intentional and planned and delivered the way that we want it to be? So before we even really knew what we were doing musically, we talked about how we wanted it to feel. And the biggest thing was that we wanted heat. We wanted it to feel energetic. We wanted it to feel hot. And so that New World Heat was kind of like the calling card, and that was the mentality for the album before we even knew that that was the album title.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then as we were going through it, it was like lyrically, it felt prevalent. And so we were like, I say we just keep rolling with that. Um, I'll give the short version, but essentially the idea is, of the record and of the lyrics on the album. I think a lot of people, ourselves included, this is not supposed to be, externally critical. I think a lot of people have a hard time with breaking out of habits. And sometimes there are external forces that keep you in bad habits. For example, big pharma and the food industry, and obviously, especially now, there are huge political issues that we're facing, and those things seek to keep you down. But then there are also, that can be such macro level, and then tiny level can literally be like, I have a hard time not scrolling on my phone. I have a hard time, I just, bad consistent habits, whether they're physical, mental, stuff like that. And so there is a there's an inherent process of discomfort that needs to accompany change. And so the idea that you need to burn everything down, and you need to be willing to, like the first song, one of the main lyrics is, "Are you ready to die?" And that's got to be the idea of, like, how far are you willing to go to actually better your life? If you want things to change, you need to be able to, like, challenge and actually strip all of that stuff away. So yeah, that's the kind of the mentality behind the record. That's the big yeah, motif, I guess.
Yeah, and you
Gotcha.
mentioned this is what you guys like went into the writing process with. This isn't what you kind of summarized once you stepped away from everything that was written, correct?
Yeah, so that it I mean, it's kind of a chicken or the egg sort of thing, where we had said that beforehand, and then as we went, that was able to kind of guide some of this stuff. But the other thing was that it was happening so organically that it felt like that stuff was it was like what we wanted to accomplish. And we've been wanting to do an album that's a little bit faster, a little bit heavier, a little bit more hardcore. I and so there were all these things that we wanted to kind of push into that were already there. So as we went, it was kind of both of those things communicating with each other, where it's like, this is what we wanted to accomplish at New World Heat, and this is what we wanted to accomplish sonically, and then those things kind of working together in tandem, uh, mutually.
That makes
Mhm.
sense.
Gotcha.
So can you tell us a little bit about the writing process for the album?
Yeah. Um, let's see, writing wise. So, like I said, I started really, really diving into the demos, probably May of last year,
Mhm.
something like that. Um, and some of that process is even just going back. We have this massive backlog of demos and even just like, voice notes on my phone of me driving around, and you have a song idea and it's literally like dun, 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 dun,
Mhm.
dun, 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 dun,
Mhm.
like, and it sounds so silly and it's ridiculous, but it's like you have those moments of there's something here, and who knows what it'll sound like when I actually put my hands on a guitar. But I'll have a song stuck in my head that I'm kind of writing as you're doing something. Um, and so we went through this whole process of kind of refining all of those, whether it's a full-blown demo or even just, like 10 seconds of something on my phone. Um, and again, the we've said it a couple times, but I think the the main barometer was temperature,
Mhm.
was a weird way that we kind of looked at all of the songs and all of the riffs and all of the parts. And we said, if it's not up to temp, then you have to throw it out.
Mhm.
So with New World Heat being again kind of that the standard that we were trying to hit, if something was cool, there was plenty of stuff that was fine. And plenty of stuff that would probably make it onto another record if that wasn't what we were trying to accomplish on this one. But a lot of it was just, it's like, all right, this isn't up to temp. This is a cool part. This is an interesting part, whatever it is, but it's not heat. It's
Mhm.
not it's not pushing that intensity, and it's not hitting the things that we wanted to hit. And so we got to throw it out. And so yeah, that refining process was pretty challenging, especially for me because I spend so much time writing, and so there are moments where I was like, I really want to go to bat for something. I'm like, this would be really cool, but eventually you have to take your hands off the steering wheel and be like, there's still 12 other songs that you did write that are still going to make it on the record as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, it's and then so we take those demos up to again our friend Connor Haynes. He is an unbelievable producer. He's a absolutely insane drummer. He's one of the best we've ever seen, and he's a phenomenal guitarist as well, which means he's very competent on bass. He worked at Guitar Center for like years, so he's a gearhead among all of that. And so he is just a phenomenal resource and one of our best friends. I was the best man at his wedding. He's just like we click so well, and so bringing those songs to him and I are able to. We just sit down in a basement, and he can kind of hear the drum parts and the guitar parts and the bass parts, and then we turn everything from these kind of janky demos that I have that are just a handful of ideas kind of thrown together. And then we kind of flesh it all out until it's like, a 2.5 minute, 3 minute song. And then we send that into our group chats. And at times the guys are coming up as well. And we're all sitting down and we're kind of like throwing ideas back and forth. And then that turns into a fully instrumental demo. And then we give that to Nathan for a couple of weeks and he tries to sit on it. And he has this insane process of he's written up to like 4 versions of almost every single song that we've ever done.
Damn.
And we, especially for him, he tries to make sure, like, okay, I'm happiest with this style of hook that showed up in these couple of things, like, or lyrically, it seems like I'm kind of focusing on this. And then he's able to kind of combine the best parts of whatever he likes from each version of the song. But yeah, he's done, I think the most he's ever done is 4.
That's nuts.
God damn.
Yeah.
So, what song off the album took the longest to write, and which one is your personal favorite?
Who took the longest to write? There's stuff like the demo that I had from 2019. We had also originally brought that to when we did Savior. Savior was a song that we wrote actually in Texas with our friend Machine, who has worked with like Every Time I Die and Suicide Silence and a bunch of Clutch, like a bunch of insane bands.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
we went out there for I think like 5 days, technically 4 because we were filming a live session out there for one of the days. So we had 4 days to do like 2 songs. And Savior came out of that, and we were really, really happy with that one. And then we had another song that we wrote that the whole time was kind of an afterthought. There just enough. There wasn't enough time to get everything done that we wanted to, and so the song kind of turned out just half finished and not quite how we wanted it to sound. Um, and so we took that that song, and we again stripped everything away and said, okay, we really love the intensity of this part. We really love this and this and this. And then we went through and restructured some of the stuff. Nathan rewrote a couple of the lyrics to make sure that it felt, honest instead of trying to rewrite something from 2 years ago. Um, and that song's called Gut Check
Mhm.
with our buddy Gary from Eyes of Salt. So that one took a while. That one, it's kind of weird to rewrite something because you've already heard the song the way that it was originally written.
Yeah.
And so kind of breaking out of like, what part comes next? It's like, well, we already wrote that. Like, I know that here it's supposed to speed up and go into the two step or whatever it is. You have to kind of like break out of that. And that's pretty challenging. My favorite on the record, it's like picking children.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what most artists say.
Yeah. I think it's just there's just so many different reasons. So like I would say Real Fast as a listener, and like if I wasn't in the band and I heard the album, I think Real Fast would be my favorite. Um, just because I mean, we've never been able to we've never really let ourselves rather just kind of like take the training wheels off and just like, again, take your hands off the wheel and just put a brick on the accelerator. Because I had that sample, which is from a movie called Toxic Avenger, just this like B movie, not even B movie, C movie, cult classic, like really schlocky uh grindhouse movie from the 80s. And the whole thing was it's this woman being like, I love it when we go real fast and they never know what hit them. And I had heard that and I took a little sample on my phone just through like a voice note. And I was like, I want to write a song that feels like that.
Mhm.
And the context is that there are these horrible people. It's like really messed up context that this group of people gets in a car and they just drive around and they just try to hit pedestrians and run them over. And so I was like, I want a song that feels like that. I want a song that's just you are just bowling people over on the highway. You're doing 120. And so we intentionally, usually we go in with so much attention to structure and how are we, what's our verse, what's our chorus. I everything is kind of very intentionally thought out. And on this one we were like, let's get rid of that. Let's just do something fast and intense and let's keep it, sub 90 seconds. Like we were like, let's just go for it. And so that was really, really exciting. That was really fun to do something like that. And again, I listen to a lot of music that's more geared towards that kind of mentality.
Mhm.
And so again, as a listener, I think if I turn on the record, that would be my favorite.
Hell yeah, I love it.
Damn straight.
So had the track list for your album come about? Did you guys write the opener be the opener, closer be the closer, shuffle around, see what fits? What was that process like?
It's a little bit. It's not an intentional choice right off the bat.
Mhm.
I think you kind of find things as you go. Um, so the opener, lyrically, we knew that the opener was going to be the opener. I think again, Nathan, as we were writing it, he was like, I really think that this should be kind of what sets the stage for the record. At that time, we didn't know it was going to be the opener. Pardon me. But as we were kind of finishing vocal takes, as we were putting the finishing touches on like production and things like that, we were like, yeah, I think this one makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Just as far as establishing what the record's going to be about,
Mhm.
kind of setting the stage, opening up just for the listener to hear it. You sit down, you hit play. What's the first thing that's going to tell you this is what the record's going to be? Um, so yeah, that was definitely an intentional choice as the song was written. It was like, yeah, this is going to be the first one.
Yeah.
And then everything else, there are kind of moments that you shuffle around. As we wrote the album Closer, we were like, this makes sense because it has this kind of extended, not fade out, but like it kind of goes from this breakdown into this groove part into this kind of hip hop feel. And so we were like that kind of makes sense to have it kind of transition down on your way out of the album.
Mhm.
Um, But yeah, then you have whatever 10 songs that you kind of shuffle around. We put the interlude in the middle, and then everything is working backwards as far as like the other thing that we have to think about is the singles. So we go, okay, we don't want to have a bunch of stuff that we've already released. So there's this kind of dead spot on the record that people are like, yeah, I've already heard it.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of, space those out. You put this one here, and that means that this one can go here. This one's a little bit faster, so maybe let's do this one here. This one's a little bit, more structured, so we do that after that. Like, so there was a lot of thought. We shuffled those songs around for a long time, but as far as how we wrote the record, we wrote, I think, like 15 of those like 30 whatever songs. We wrote probably 15 of them, and then we trimmed down to 12, and then you kind of piece stuff in from there like puzzle pieces.
Yeah. The attention to where the singles are is something in particular that I'm glad you mentioned, because I feel like in this day and age where there's so many singles, it's easy to kind of fall into that pit of there's so many songs you've heard in a row, and I feel like that's a problem I'm having with records these days. So I appreciate that an artist actually says that they paid attention to that, because we get the intro and the outro, people paying attention to that still, but not where the singles are placed.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of records that I've listened to that you get the first, like, how, if even if there's only two or three singles, whatever it is, it's like that's tracks 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to start the record a quarter of the way done.
Yeah.
And that's it. Just then it feels like the product is kind of unfinished as before it's even started. So yeah, we were very careful to try to, like, kind of piece those things in throughout the album so that it can be something familiar as you're going through it, as opposed to like, I don't need the first 25% of this album.
True. Yeah. And would you be able to tell us where your headspace is at while you're creating the record?
Yeah, I think it was mostly just excitement. It, like, we really, there was a little bit of stress, as there always is. But creatively, like, the stress didn't really set in until we were starting to figure out things like album art and all the kind of, like, quote unquote bureaucratic stuff that goes into making an album. There's so much talking about rollouts and music videos and album art, and all that stuff is just, there's so many tiny details that you wouldn't even think of. And so that's where a lot of that stress came from. But creatively, like, during the process of the record, it was really, really exciting. Again, we had this backlog that we were working on. We had so many songs, so it wasn't a matter of, like, something feeling like we don't have enough. So there wasn't that kind of stress of like, oh, we got, like, shit, I got to write something quick. Like, it was like, we have plenty to work from. We're working in such a comfortable space. We have literally, like, one of our best friends, and he lives like half an hour away. So we were able to go up for like 3 weeks every day, and we didn't even have to leave home or anything like that. Which, as a side note, we want to do something more along those lines on a future record, where we fly out to a place and it's the only thing that you're working on. I like, but I think for this one, it just made so much sense to be like, okay, this way we don't have to overthink anything. We can be in a comfortable place. We can work on songs with somebody that we've already worked on songs with. He's worked on Silence and Violence, Lady Luck, Fear and Loathing. He's been our guy forever. And so it felt super consistent and super easy. Yeah, I think there was, I don't want to go too far into it, but there was a little bit of stress with our drummer Griffith. Unfortunately, he had had a baby, and so there was just so it was really, really hard to try to, like, organize time with him and for him to be present on the album, which made us really upset. It was hard because we were fighting to make that happen, and it's just, unfortunately, a baby is a full-time job.
Yeah.
And so, especially like a newborn. So yeah, that was probably the only kind of quote unquote negative or like downside, was trying to make that work and trying to see if we can get him up to the studio as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's good to hear that the record in its entirety was mostly a positive process, and really the only thing the stress was once it was done, not that everyone was in some negative, bad headspace during the creation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, even there wasn't really a negative or bad headspace even after. Like the stress is still a labor of love and
Mhm.
it's excitement.
Mm.
And it's like, you know, the other thing is that all of us are such hands-on people with this band, and it sometimes can be a too many cooks situation where it's
Yeah.
like we all are really passionate about how we want this band to be presented and to be perceived and where we want this band to go and what our, what's our 5-year plan, stuff like that. And we're all really, really hands-on with that, which is really, really exciting. But at the same time, we've all said it would be so much easier if it was like, we had one guy who was like making those calls and then everybody else is like on board. Uh, but yeah, so again, all of those conversations were still, we were just so excited, but we did probably 5 different versions of the album art. And it took a while until all of us were super happy with it.
Damn.
Oh, damn.
So this question should be super, super quick. Off the top of your head, I want you to describe this album for new listeners in 3 words, no more, no less.
I mean, New World Heat. Like it's something new, it's something fresh, it's something challenging. But it's hot and it should feel, you should feel it. New World Heat.
Typically, we don't let that slide, but because it was kind of the mantra for the record, I'm gonna let it go.
I
Our hands are
I can
tied.
come up with 3 others, but
Yeah.
it's gonna be some variation of that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And are you able to touch on any particularly challenging or standout moments during the creation of the album, positive or negative?
Again, not a ton of really challenging moments as far as the creation of the record. There's definitely some moments that we were kind of stretching a little bit, stretching our muscles on something that was a little bit new.
Mhm.
Um, and I think pretty early on we had to learn to say yes to stuff, um, instead of trying to put a box around what we thought the band is. I say that only because so on something like Lady Luck, on something like Fear and Loathing, we're doing an EP, we're doing like 3 or 4 songs. It's such a concise, kind of hyper refined thing that you're presenting. Um, and on an LP, you have so much more space to be able, you can do a song that sounds a little bit different because that informs how you listen to the next song. And so you have this kind of a lot more space and you have 12 different songs to be able to do. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of this on this one, but that's okay because the next one is going to sound a little bit more like this. Whereas on an EP, it's like, if you do 4 songs, then and one of them is kind of weird, then it's like that EP is now 25% weird.
Mhm.
Mm.
Um, so we had to pretty early on, we had to again kind of extend the barriers of what we thought this band was capable of being.
Mm.
Um, I was writing some stuff that that sounded like Trapped Under Ice and Expire and um, kind of early 2000s hardcore that typically we would not be able to do. Um, but something like Pure Adrenaline, something like Gut Check, even a little bit of the song Tough Luck, those were songs that probably wouldn't usually make it onto an album, but because we had so much space and because we were trying to kind of push what the band is capable of doing, that kind of thing we were allowed to say yes to that, which is really, really exciting. But definitely kind of a learning process.
Yeah, absolutely. That
Sure.
makes sense. And for this last question, I want you to picture you're on tour, you're at a gas station for a rest stop. What is your snack of choice?
During the day,
Mhm.
it's Gatorade, white cherry. I'm a white, the whatever the white ice glacier cherry, I think it is.
Mm.
Um, and then a Arizona tea. I'm a 2 drink guy. All of
Okay.
us
Hell
are
yeah.
2 to 3 drink people. It's like one for business, one for pleasure.
Hmm.
Hell yeah.
Um, and then a tube of Pringles,
Mm.
preferably pizza. I'll also take barbecue.
Okay.
And something sweet is I like there's these Hershey's like white chocolate covered pretzels with like Oreo, like it's like a cookies and cream chocolate covered pretzel thing.
Mhm.
That's my
Mm.
go-to.
Hell yeah.
That sounds
At
fire.
nighttime, I'm really bad about, I do most of the night drives.
Mhm.
So anytime we're overnighting, I get like a ton of other stuff.
Damn.
Um, and so I get like gummy bears, I get uh I like we'll get gas station hot dogs, just
Ooh.
big giant bag. I try to eat spicy stuff to stay awake on the road, so
Mhm.
like Flamin' Hot
Mm.
Cheetos or Munchies. Yeah,
Anything to keep your mouth busy.
exactly.
That makes
You
sense.
said it, not me.
Yeah.
Uh,
So as I said, that's all the questions I have today. Is there anything that you would like to plug?
Just plugging the record. We have some shows coming up in July. I'm not sure exactly when this is going to be releasing, so either come out to those or we hope you enjoyed them once this comes out. And then we have huge plans for the end of the year. We're working on some stuff that's specifically for Colorado for the album release. We want to show some hometown love, and then we're working on touring. So to everyone sending us questions about, when are you coming back to wherever, we're actively trying to get everywhere that we possibly can. If not before the end of the year, then at least by the end of or by this time next year. But yeah, check out the record. I am so happy and proud of how this thing turned out, and I'm really excited for people to have it. Um, we've been a quote unquote underrated band for a long time. That's how people have we get tagged in so many things that are like, "What's your favorite band that no one's ever heard of?" kind of thing, and we're honored, and it's really really flattering and humbling. But at the same time, I'm excited for hopefully to not be the band that nobody's heard of anymore. I'm
mm,
like, this is going to be something definitive that we can really plant our feet and say this is an album that we stand by and that we hope that
mm.
you guys enjoy.
Hell yeah, I love it. No more being tagged in the unknown band
Yeah,
posts.
exactly.
This is
Yeah.
it with this record.
Hell yeah.
Well, thank you. Sound has been Brandon from Fox Lake, and we have been the Good Noise Podcast.